With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
So one of the most popular things to do in punditry, talking heads like me, whether it's writing or talking on radio or podcasts or Substack or whatever the case may be, is who's to blame for all this mess? And it's an interesting question because who to blame is a lucrative genre. I've dabbled in it quite a bit. You can write a piece that this person is to blame for this issue. And that's a pretty good way to get things published, or it's a pretty good headline for a YouTube video, pretty good headline for a TikTok video. It gets people's attention because everybody wants to blame somebody, and the person that gets blamed is never ourselves, of course. But here's the thing with everything that's going on, and this is a wide perspective. This is the 3,000 feet looking down perspective. Part of the problem with partisan politics is you can't get out of the bubble of the partisan politics. It's a lot of fun, the game of it, who's winning, who's losing, and all that. But that's really, the intramural level. It's not the pro level. The pro level is power structures and money and power and powerful people. That's where the real game is, because we've seen over and over again people with certain ideologies, when they get into power, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And they just change, all the corruption to whatever it is they want and their wants. And then the ideology goes to the wayside. So who's to blame for this? Well, in the United States of America, we have a very unique system of government. And that unique system of government isn't working really well. And the breakdown of this system of government that we have is very apparent. And the president gets a lot of the attention and the lion's share of it. And there has been an excessive amount of executive overreach and executive abuse of power, bipartisan, across multiple presidents now, going back pretty much my entire lifetime and before, if you really want to get particular about it. But that's not really the problem. The Supreme Court gets all kinds of bad press about this and that, and why doesn't the Supreme Court do this, and why did they rule this way, and look at these horrible people judging this, and they're either the best court ever or the worst court ever, depending on what you want to do. But they're not really the problem either. In fact, the theme of the Roberts Court is that they know what the problem is, and the problem needs to get solved, and the problem needs to fix itself so that they can do their job correctly. And that problem is Congress, our other branch of government. See, almost all the problems we're having in politics and policy and ideology and in our country, you can trace them to Congress, and that's not an accident. Congress is supposed to be the part of the government that is representative of us. And in a democratically elected republic, which is what we got, the representatives of us, the congressmen and the senators, that's who we have the most direct control over, especially the Congress people. We elect them every 2 years. So really, with their election cycles, which is already starting up on the midterms as soon as we get through the end of the summer, they really only got about 6 to 9 months of doing their job, and then they're running for re-election again. That's the part of the government we have the most direct control of at the federal level. And that's the part we really don't exercise a whole lot of control over. Once people get elected, they tend to stay there for a pretty long period of time. People talk about the gridlock and the deadlock in Congress. Well, no, that's just representative of the country. Fundamentally, people keep wanting to elect people that they want to get their stuff done. And the country's more and more divided. So therefore, Congress has gotten more and more divided. That's part of the problem. We don't want to look in the mirror and admit that the problem is us. And this is a cascading problem because this problem goes against the way our government is designed. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people have spent a lot of ink and clicks and online video and all sorts of stuff on the presidents, whether it's president just in my lifetime. Technically, Carter was president when I was alive, but I don't remember. I was a baby. But Reagan, who I barely remember, I was pretty little. And then both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. My lifetime of those presidencies, all of them have been accused to various levels, one way or the other, of executive overreach, of wanting to be in charge of too much, of breaking the rules, yada, yada, yada. Now, President Trump has taken it to another level, and President Biden is a little bit of the outlier there because he was the one-termer because of what happened with the debate and his clear decline. I'm sorry, I'm not arguing about this. He had a clear decline. That's why he lost the election. You can debate that some other time. But if we take what's going on with President Trump and what he's is accused of, a lot of it's got a lot of merit. Almost everything he's doing could be blunted by Congress. And the reason Congress failing to do so is because this goes against the way our government was designed. So people say things like, well, the founders never imagined anybody like Donald Trump. Sure they did. Well, they didn't imagine somebody like Joe Biden or Barack. Sure they did. If you do any reading, even a cursory reading of the founding fathers when they sat down to design this government, they absolutely understood ambitious men that wanted to be tyrants, who wanted tyrannical power, who wanted to be dictators. Remember, they're coming off of King George III, who, to be fair, and if I take my American patriotism down just a notch or two, it wasn't like he was the worst king that England ever had. He was kind of a good king for England in a lot of ways, although the decline of the British Empire started under him for a lot of reasons. He just happened to be there, but we had legitimate grievances against him, and he didn't understand the moment, and he didn't understand the American patriotism, and they lost the colonies. Good for us, bad for them. But the founding fathers absolutely understood tyrannical government. That's what they were fighting against. Here's what they didn't anticipate, and they didn't understand. And if you read any of the writings of the founding fathers, Jefferson, Madison, any of these guys, Monroe, they absolutely could not have fathomed what they would see in our government now, which is a Congress full of supplicants, people who just blindly go along with what the president or the party and other people tell them to do. They imagined Congress, both the House and the Senate, being full of people that were equally ambitious. Our system of government is designed for ambitious people to hash things out and then have to come to some kind of a consensus to push the country forward and to run the government. And the weights and balance and counterbalances and the separations of powers was meant to work along the natural human nature of ambitious people who all wanted power. That's how it's supposed to work. So our government has a very broken thing in the middle of it with Congress, because now we have a Congress full of people that just want to go along with whatever the president says. And whose fault is that? Well, it's the Congress people's fault first for, I hate to say, not being ambitious enough, but at least having some self-dignity to not just go along and be doormats for whoever the president is. And this is both parties. When the Democrats get a president again, we'll see this again. They'll be in lockstep. Partisan politics will win. But right now it's Trump and the Republicans, and it's at a cringy, gross level of how they just, if you go and watch the cabinet meetings, it's almost a North Korean style, oh, great leader, thank you for being so awesome. Like, what is that? It's cringy. Even if you really like Donald Trump, don't do that. Have some self-respect. But Congress is not just the Congress people's fault. That's our fault. Because again, that's the branch of government that we, you, me, all of us have the most control over at the federal level. We elect them every 2 years. They're always running. They always got their ear to the ground. They always know what's going on. They're always worried about it. They are constantly running for re-election, and we can get them out of there anytime we want to if we choose to. And if you're not changing it, you're allowing it. And if you're allowing it, you're endorsing it. So if we're going to say Congress is the heart of a lot of our problems, and they are, we have to start by looking at us. Tariffs are all over the news. You know who has the power of tariffs? Congress does. The president has an emergency power, but Congress could just say, no, this isn't actually an emergency. You got to come to us, cut the funding off. Fine. Almost all the DOGE stuff, that's all the purview of Congress. They could shut any of that down anytime they want to. Almost everything Donald Trump's doing that you don't like, if you really don't like it, Congress has the ability to do something about it, either oversight-wise or legislative-wise. But it's easier for Congress to just go along with whatever the president's doing, and the president gets all the blame, and they get to, have their cushy jobs and their cushy offices and get all the perks of being in Congress and get all the stock deals, which we need to get rid of that, by the way. That's how this thing's working. The way the government was supposed to work is a bunch of ambitious people working together. And what we got right now is a bunch of lazy supplicants who just want to enjoy the trappings of government without any of the work, and they just go along with the president. And it's thrown our entire system of government off balance. The Supreme Court gets some blame, but they're trying to rebalance something that's out of balance, that's out of their control if Congress won't do their job. The theme of the Roberts Court, if you really look at it over the last few years, has been Congress needs to fix this. They say it over and over and over again. This is a matter for Congress. Congress is supposed to deal with this. We can't do this. Congress is supposed to fix this. Congress is the problem. And Congress is the problem because At the heart of all this, the real problem in our government isn't Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever they're going to run against J.D. Vance in the next presidential election. It's not the ideology of the parties. It's not the liberals or the conservatives, although those terms pretty much don't mean anything anyway. The problem is us. We allow Congress to do whatever they want with almost no repercussions and no fear of repercussions, and then we wonder why the entire system of government's out of balance. If you want smaller government, you're never going to get it with a Congress that just goes along, gets along like flowing water. If you want more benefits or you're on the progressive side and you want an activist government that does more stuff, you're never going to get it with a Congress that just goes along to get along. In other words, nobody's getting what they want right now. But everybody seems to be fine with that, because if we weren't fine with that, progressives, the Trump right, moderates, people in the middle like me who don't know what's going on anymore, to use a term, we're just trying to figure it all out. None of us are going to get what we want with what we got. So the question then is, when are we going to do something different? Because until then, we're just going to get more and more of this. And we'll blame the president, and we'll blame the press, and we'll blame the other party that we're not a part of, and we'll blame our ideological counterparts that we're fighting against. And the people with prejudices and bigotry will blame the people they always blame for everything, because that's the small-mindedness they're trapped in. Or we'll blame world events or blah, 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 blah. Really, we need to find a mirror. And remember, the representation part of our government system is us, and it's representing exactly what we are right now. An unserious people who are pretty much not interested in the inner workings of how to make things better, but we sure like to caterwaul about how bad they are in the meantime. We have an unserious government because we're an unserious people. And until we fix that, we're going to be stuck in this doom loop, regardless of who the president is.
All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.